Fact or fake news? Sam Presti is going to own 4 of the Sydney Kings draft picks over the next 2 years.
Yeah, if we had draft picks, he probably would. Welcome to Rogue Bogues, another week of basketball news. Not a lot going on in the league other than basketball, which is a good thing. It's kind of how we like it. Not a lot of news off the floor, but we'll get right into our Team of the Weeks, Pro. What's news over there? New president? What changed for your daily life now that you've got a new president, Pro?
Oh, probably 80 or 90 less texts from fucking political morons that want to talk politics that don't know anything about politics on both ends of the spectrum. So I'm pretty fucking glad that I don't have to deal with those morons on a daily basis. But surely you woke
up and your routine changes now. It's a different president. Everything, you get more or less money in your bank account. You don't have to do the same thing with the kids because new president, right?
Yeah, the president has as much to do with my life on a daily basis than me eating a fucking salad today instead of not. So, no, I'm not really changing up my fucking routine much about who my president is or not. But, millions of other people, or actually about 8 million less people voted this year than last time. So that was interesting. But, there are a lot of people misinformed about how their life's going to change based on who the president is or not.
Doesn't.
So, no,
it doesn't. That's what I always find funny. Like whichever side you're with or without, when these things happen, it's not. You still got to get up and feed your kids. You got babies.
Yeah, your bills are still coming in.
You still got to wipe their ass. If you got kids, you got to pay bills. You still got to eat a shit sandwich at your job every now and then. Like you got to pay your mortgage. You got to pay. Blah, 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 X, Y, Z. So I don't think that changes too much. People are so caught up in it all, like it's going to change their life, and they get a reality shock, So
last night, Bogues, I went to Baylor versus Arkansas college basketball. I'm not a huge college basketball fan. I literally need cataract surgery trying to watch college basketball because it's fucking brutal. But last night, there was about $9 million of NIL money, and both teams need about a $7.5 million fucking refund because I don't know what they're paying for, but it's literally brutal to watch. Literally brutal to watch. But a friend of mine was the title sponsor of his company, so of the game. It was in Dallas at the American Airlines Center, so went in there. But man, I had a client, a high school kid, Anthony Black's brother that I work with. I wanted to go to his game, but I told the guy I would go to the game. That game was a stinker. My guy ends up making 4 to 5 threes and had like 30. I probably should have went to the high school game, but man, that was a rough one last night.
It's becoming like the pros because it's an interesting thing we accidentally segue into is with college basketball now. There's so much movement and changeover. It's you can't really build continuity or a system, and that's why I feel like these middle to low tier schools that just get a good solid squad that have a nice system, they do so well now because you got them together for 3 or 4 years. You look at these top 50 schools, even probably mid majors now. It's like, I'm not playing 35 a night, I'm transferring, or I'm not getting 30 shots, I'm transferring. There's so much movement. So it's like, how do you build a program now? It's very similar to the pros. It's like not happy, want to trade, and
it's really
it must be hard for some of these coaches,
In Bogues, like what happens is now, like they have the NIL that everybody talks about like your collective for the school, but you also in these Power Fives, the bigger conferences of the top 5 conferences in the country, they have this revenue share that they do, where each school has to put in $25 million to give to their athletes on top of the NIL. I don't know why or how. But man, I just don't understand it.
And they get split evenly between like
not evenly. I guess you could spend it the way you want to spend it.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if every team's sort of allocated. And there's only certain teams that get it. So it's really interesting how they're doing that. And like now they're getting rid of walk-ons for next year. So instead of 15 scholarships, you have 17. I'm hearing from all sorts of high school coaches that are saying that like all they're doing is scamming it up where a college would recruit a walk-on basically and say, we'll give you a scholarship, but in return, you have to give to our NIL collective basically what the scholarship's worth. It is a complete fucking
and their dad's
shit show.
The rich family that wants their kid on a squad is going to do that, of course.
Oh, without question. Without
I mean,
question.
they're going to have a salary cap soon in NIL.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. I just don't know how they could continue to
sustainable
raise all this money. Yeah, it's a tough thing, but Rogues,
yeah, but the boosters, man, you know how the boosters are. There's these, especially some of these Texas schools and whatnot. There's so much money being thrown around. It can be a tax credit anyway. So, Joe Blow, who's in the local community, who's got a car dealership, will give him $3-4 million to sit courtside and be seen, and writes that off on his taxes. So, I guess it makes it interesting.
But here's what I'm thinking. Okay, so say Bogue, say you give to Utah, right? And say you give $2.5 million, and like maybe $1 million goes to the library, right? You want to build a library every year or a building every year. So you give them $1 million there, and then maybe $1.5 million for athletics, right? So like now they're hitting you up and say, Bogues, like, we love that you give that 2.5. Can you allocate that, 2.5 or $3 million to athletics because we need our NIL package? And you're like, okay, whatever, I'll do it. But I'm wondering how many people do that and then not give their $1 million to the school to do school stuff. So that's the thing. Like, you're raising all this money for athletics. I'm wondering how much this is going to put a damper on other things you have to raise money for universities. Because if I'm a donor and I give every year, yeah, there's that guy or girl that gives $3 million, sits courtside, whatever. But like, how many of those are there? So like, yeah, you could hit them up and they might give you a little bit more money to raise your collective or whatever. But like, I'm just wondering how, if you keep hitting these people up and you have to give more and more, and you have to raise this NIL package plus the revenue sharing. That's interesting, man. That's an interesting.
It'll go dry. It'll go dry eventually, especially in some of the small schools. Yeah. But it's definitely given it's a pro to some of these low to mid majors, that have a system and keep 4 years of players together. You're going to have a huge advantage over some of these other individual schools. And a few funny college stories we'll get into a little bit later. I had some stuff on the run sheet, but let's get into our team of the weeks.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to the Cavs again, man. I have to. They are playing great basketball right now. 13th team pro in NBA history to begin at a minimum of 11-0.
Let me correct you there, Bogues. They're the 12th. I read that last night. I think they're the 12th. Yeah.
12th. Okay, 12th.
Yeah.
Oh, that was at 11-0. So this is they're 12-0 now, aren't they?
Yeah, 12-0. I think they're the 12th, but maybe I'm wrong. You can look it up.
No, you're right. I had it at 11-0. I didn't update it. So you're 11-0. I had 13. But anyway, I've got all the teams so we can go over them.
Sure. No, fuck that.
All the teams that it was, but I think it is 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's from 10-0. So yeah, you're right. Okay, so you're right. Do you happen to know who has the all-time greatest start in NBA history, pro?
Oh boy.
24-0. 24-0.
What year was it?
Can't
give it away. Golden State. Golden State.
Yes. Guess who was on the roster? Guess who was on the roster? And then we bombed out in 7 games. In 7 games, we bombed out in that final series, which still hurts today. But we were, so 27-0 Warriors, the 93-94 Rockets, 15-0. Washington Capitals, so it tells you how long ago that was, 48-49. Dallas Mavericks, 14-0 in 02-03. Celtics in 57-58. Bulls, 96-97. Sonics, 82-83. And then you got Hawks, Lakers, Portland, Boston, and now Cleveland.
Of course, you had to bring up the team that you play for, you Gusto.
I didn't bring it up. It just happens to be the greatest start of all time. It's not my fault. I was just a screen setter on that fabulous team. But Cleveland are playing well, man. I still think health is an issue for them. They've got guys they do have some guys in that roster that have not remained healthy for a season. Mitchell, Garland, Allen. So can those 3 guys consistently give them 60 games this year, 65, 70? But they're super well coached. Kenny Atkinson's doing a fantastic job. They beat Milwaukee, New Orleans. They pummel Golden State, who are in really good form, and they steal one from Brooklyn late. They probably shouldn't have won. So they're finding ways to win and playing great basketball, but they just have so much length, good mix of scoring. Do they have enough shooting? Who knows? I mean, they've got some guys off the bench who come and shoot the ball a little bit, but the amount of length they have out on the floor, and they're putting Mobley in a creator spot a lot as well, which I've noticed. They're putting him in a lot of actions where he's creating and being able to go downhill. And I think they found something last season in that playoff run against Boston where they moved Mobley to the 5 for stretches, and it created a bunch of mismatches. And they get to go to that a little bit when they take Allen out of the game and go small. But they look really, really good right now. It is early season. It's still a honeymoon period, but they're playing fantastic basketball.
Yeah, and I think this is what coaches really need to do, especially if you want to go small ball or positionless or whatever you want to call it, with your bigs, especially if you have athletic bigs. Mobley and Allen being two. I would say Mobley has got a little bit more motor skill than Allen has, but I'm a huge Allen fan. But like being able to catch the ball from the perimeter and straight line drive it and put pressure on the defense. You don't have to handle the ball. You don't have to be, you don't have to be like Luka Doncic with the basketball. I'm talking about just being able to be a threat to catch the ball, rip it through, and force defenses to collapse on you and try to make, plays for other people or plays at the rim. And I think Mobley and Allen can both do that. Mobley probably a little bit more than Allen, but it puts a lot of pressure on the defense. I agree with you. The shooting might, they are having some guys that could knock down some shots, but if they can keep the shot, the 3-point shooting going to go along with the length, to go along with the scoring of Mitchell and Garland, I think they have a really good mix of, play just the way they want to play. Kenny Atkinson's doing a hell of a job, and just being able to organize those guys, get them played and tough. He's probably one of the best in the league at holding guys actually accountable, and he'll do that if he coaches a team that's 12 or 13-0 or 0-13. He doesn't go away from his principles of holding people accountable, having them compete, and just letting them know what they need to be doing. And look, they've taken everybody by surprise, and I hope they keep on rolling with it. Gaston, I don't want you to be dethroned of your 24-0 start. So hopefully they can go 23-0 and then lose one, just for the sake of you.
Well,
yeah,
I think
that would be nice.
Every chance they get the next 4, they got Chicago and at Philly. I think that might be the Embiid return game, but Maxi's out. Then Chicago at home, and then Charlotte at home. So the next 4 games: Chicago, Philly, Chicago, Charlotte, all winnable, beyond winnable games for them. And then they have Boston at Boston. That's the one that could probably get them, and I think Boston will be pumped for that. But if they somehow sneak Boston, I'm getting nervous, bro, because beyond that they got New Orleans, who are injury ravaged, Toronto, Atlanta, and then Boston again. So I don't think they get through Boston twice to get to our record, but it might be close. If they get through these 4 and somehow get Boston, we might have to put the mods on and try to put the commentator's curse on them that they can't do it.
Without question. What I'll do is I'll root for them to win 24, and then there's no chance. There's no fucking chance.
They won't do it. No. But yeah, good on the Cavs, playing good basketball. Really good start. Who you got?
The Golden State Warriors this week, folks. I mean, big win at Boston. I had them at like 10 this year. Currently, what are they at 7-2 right now? I mean, they're playing great basketball.
Third,
obviously Steph's doing his thing. I just didn't. I didn't expect them to just sort of have this type of a start, especially, with the roster changes they've had. No Clay, and I thought those young guys have been playing decent. They're competing, and they're getting a lot of, they've gotten a lot of production.
Currently up at time of recording, currently up 13 in the third quarter against OKC too. So
yeah,
they did get pummeled against Cleveland. Weren't in that game from the start, down by 35, 40 at some points. But yeah, to your point, man, they're playing really good basketball, and they might get the best team in the league.
Yeah, I mean 7-2, they're really competing, and they're staying in it, and that's with the younger guys that really haven't been that big a piece of this team before, and I think they're doing very well. Buddy Hield at 19 a game, shooting splits at 50, 49, 4 from 3, and 85, 7 from the free throw line. So. They get a lot of good production out of him, and Wiggins is playing all right, and Draymond. I mean, they're really doing a good job. I definitely got to hand it to them. They're playing well, but I just didn't expect them to have this type of a start. But look, they're rolling with it, and they're not exactly the Cleveland Cavaliers, but they're trying, but they're really competing. And I thought they had a good week, especially even without. I don't know if Jaylen Brown played in that game or not, but. But even beating Boston at Boston on the road against a team like that is, that's a hell of a feat.
Yeah, they've had Boston's number though. You know, that championship series, they match up really well against them. Side note: Chet Holmgren has gone down with an injury. He's absolutely clobbered himself contesting a layup from Andrew Wiggins and kind of fell on the side. So he's only played. I was looking at the stats. He's played 5 minutes. So I was like, "What happened? Foul trouble? No foul trouble." So looks like they haven't announced it yet, but it looked pretty bad. It didn't look super bad, but like fell on his hip and back and was rolling around in pain. So he looks like he's out of the game. So hopefully he's back because he's a big part of what they do. But it's put Golden State in a pretty good position, 79-62 as we speak. So, but yeah, look, Golden State, you just wouldn't think they'd bounce back this well. Not a lot of roster changes, but I like their lineups. I like what Kerr's done. I like the fact that they got Buddy Hield in that poor man's Klay Thompson role and probably been better than Klay was last season, early for the Warriors. If that sustains, who knows? But off the bench, just gunning. You know, they bring in Wiggins and Draymond, really solid defensive 3-4 there. And then you got, they've started Melton today, who's done pretty well. Steph can get you, 40, 50 on any given night. And they got a lot of guys off the bench to play with energy. I mean, Kuminga off the bench, I think I like what Steve's done there. I think just rattling him a little bit and saying, you haven't earned it yet. And we're going to go through you off the bench, but we're going to have more of a solid kind of fundamental starting five. Jackson Davis has been good at the five for them as last season and this season. And then, they just got a nice little mix. And they go deep, bro. They're one of the few teams in the league that goes super deep now. They're playing 10 guys, 11 guys on a consistent basis. So many different lineups to go to. They've still got champions on that team. You can never count them out. Do they have enough to win a championship with this roster? I don't think so. But I think they're going to be very, very competitive. And like you said, we both didn't have them in the top 2, top 3, but they're one of those squads that you always kind of have an eye to because they can just surprise you and go on crazy runs. And whenever you got a Steph Curry on your team that can just turn a game on its head, you got to always kind of be worrisome. So they've definitely played some good basketball. So be looking forward to seeing how they go the rest of the season. So my team of the week, I'm going to go with Philly. And I'm going Philly. Look, their performance, they're 1-7. They're last in the East. They've lost 5 straight. But I think it's just a combination of everything going on. They've just got Maxey out of the lineup now. Like, if you're Joel Embiid, you just can't do what he did. He's already missed games with injury, expected back, and then shoves a reporter. Whether you think that was right or wrong, that's a separate argument. But then you've put your team in jeopardy now. Now you miss a further 3 games when you're supposed to be back. PG's banged up. They're just, it's just clunky. It doesn't look good. We had reservations at the start for how they would go. I had them a little bit lower than most people just based on not relying on those guys being on the court. And now Maxey's a huge loss for him because he's the guy that's in this probably the past year or two. He's the one guy that you count on to show up every night and play with energy and effort, and he's improved a lot, can get you 40 on any given night. And, even now with him out of the lineup due to injury, it's tough. And they just, I don't know if they, it's going to be a hell of a bounce back at 1-7. It's still early, but knowing what we know that PG is going to rest given nights moving forward, and so is Embiid and Maxey out at 1-7 right now, pro. I mean, what do they do? Do they knock on that door and say, hey guys, like we might not be able to give you those rest nights for 3 or 4 weeks to sustain Maxey being out. I don't think they can do that neither, because then those guys might burn out. They got a winnable game in Charlotte today, or versus Charlotte, so they might get that one. But they're looking bad, pro. And you start 1-7, and that turns into 3-15. There goes your season.
Yeah, it's definitely rough for them right now, and I don't think they'll have any control over whether those guys play or not. I think those guys are going to be calling the shots if they play or they don't. They might fall into a little bit of peer pressure to be able to especially with media internal, and especially what's riding on the season, with acquiring the players they acquired to sort of build this to, Paul George and some of the other moves that they made. I think they're going to have to try to do something to sort of to rejuvenate themselves. I mean, I don't think anybody really thought they were going to be last in the East, by any stretch of the imagination. And it goes back to Embiid. Look, it's not like he's rehabbing an injury that anyone knows about. basically it's listed, the way I read it was listed as he's not in shape to play. He needs to get in game shape. And I don't know what that means, playing in the Olympics in the summer and just, not hurting yourself. And you're getting all this money on your contract and things. And that's what fans see. That's what the media sees. And that's why there's so much, there's such a microscope on the whole thing. And I just don't understand it. And
I think there's an injury, pro, and I think there's an injury of some sort that was sustained at some point in the preseason or camp that they're just protecting him from and not announcing. I mean, if I'm reading between the lines, like he missed the first. What's he missed before the suspension? He missed the first 6. Like, that's not just. Yeah.
Has he played yet, Bogues? I didn't even.
No.
I don't.
Hasn't played a game. That's what I mean. He hasn't played a game, and he's been. He's been injured, so they're 1-7. He just got suspended for 3 games, so he's missed the first 5 or 6 anyway. That reads to me like they're just not announcing what's wrong with him. I don't think it's a long-term thing, but I think there was an injury somewhere along the lines. You know how you've been part of NBA teams. At times they'll try to protect the player as much as possible and not give too much information. I think that's this case. I think there's an injury there that probably sustained in training camp from maybe being out of shape, not ready to play. But if it's as simple as what you're saying, that's ridiculous. If it's like, just trying to get him into shape. Like, you fucking playing in the Olympics until August. Like, what did you do from August till September, dude? Like,
yeah, it's just a broken record every year. It's either he doesn't finish the year because of injury or he's out of shape at the end of the year. It just, at some point now you're gonna have to put it together. You can't. It's sort of like the Andrew Bynum disease, where like Bynum, who played for the Lakers, who was not as good as a player as Embiid, but he was one of the top 4 or 5 centers in the league when he was playing, and especially when he was rolling. But he never could put a full season together. Never was in great shape. Always was something. Always an injury. Always some type of an excuse. And look, he's got to put something together. But look, they're 1-7. To add insult to injury, Bogues. Do you know who owns their 2025 first-round pick?
Do I know who owns it?
Yeah.
So
don't Google it, you motherfucker.
No, I won't. So that was already OKC?
Yeah. OKC has it protected to 7. That's a 6. So they get, so if it's 7 to 30, OKC gets it. Fucking Presti. Jesus. Presti's like that. Presti's like that fucking guy that, like, you turn the corner on Monopoly and he's got all the greens and he's got Boardwalk Park Place. He's got North Carolina Avenue. He's even got Baltic fucking Avenue if you cross the fucking timeline on when you pass go. Presti has everybody's number. It's unbelievable.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's a 95% bet. If someone asks you who owns their pick, you just say OKC.
Just OKC.
It's just OKC.
Yeah,
it's OKC.
Who owns Vegas's first round pick when they get their team? Oh, fucking OKC has it. It's unbelievable.
But back to Philly, man. Like, Embiid's so important to what they do, and he's not. I guess when you've got guard lineups, kind of Phoenix with their big 3, even Clippers, you slot a guard in. It's you're resting a guard and then bringing in a guard like the Kawhi, Paul George thing, and KD, Beal, and Booker. It's a little bit different because you're sliding in a guard and then he's not there, and it's like, okay. But when it's a guy like Embiid, you play a whole different style with him out on the floor. That's what kills me with him missing so many games. You don't get the continuity. You don't get to play long-term in a season with him. He's not a guy you can just slot in late in the season and then think everything is just going to run smoothly, because you're playing a different style of ball. Like, now you're playing Drummond at the 5, who's a role-playing center, doesn't need the ball, happy to block shots and rebound. So Maxi's getting high usage. PG's getting high usage. All right, Embiid's back. Shit, now there goes 30% of your usage each, guys, because we're going to get Embiid involved. It just kills you. And he's so important. He's so important to what they do. They need him getting reps. They need him out there. They need to play with him. So like you said, it doesn't get to a playoff series. One, yes, there's the burnout factor every season we see with Embiid. He just cannot sustain a playoff run. And that's a time where the games get more physical. There, you only have a couple of rest days between each game. You don't have a block of 3 or 4 days at certain times. But secondly, I think you got to play with him. They got to get used to playing with him and even Nurse coaching with him and all that kind of stuff. And I just think that's just going to kill them in the long run. They're just not going to get enough reps together.
Well, that's the thing too, Bogues. And then going forward, how does all this stuff that's happened in the last few years, minus the MVP, how does that impact his trade value? So say this year goes to shit and they're like, all right, we got to think about it. Like, what kind of a package would you give for Embiid with the injury issue, with the, in shape issue, like, the playoff defaulters, the faults in the playoffs? Like, what are you going to give? Like, we know what Giannis is going to demand, right? We know if Luka, down the line, if he ever leaves Dallas, like what that's going to look like as far as the package you're going to have to get. We know if Steph Curry, if Golden State wants to get off of him, or Booker, I mean, these are all hypotheticals, of course, but like all those guys demand huge packages. And I think teams would gladly give you what you want for those guys. If you're a team, Bogues, if you got all these picks, are you going to give a treasure chest of assets to Philly if they're saying, all right, fuck it, we're just gonna get off Embiid? Are you going to make that gamble knowing that he, how many games is he going to play? Like, when's the last time?
I could see a small market doing it, Washington, someone who sucks already, maybe, but he's got 4 years. He's got 4 years from here, bro. He's got 4 years at 55, 59, 64, and 69 million. With his health issues, is a huge risk, and it eats up a lot of your cap, right? So, and you got to be somewhat, either have the cap space or go like for like with salaries. So you're going to lose some assets. But I don't know. I think he's a game changer when healthy.
Sure.
He's a game changing player, right? But you got to respect, like, kind of, he won his MVP. Did he take the foot off the gas a little bit? Who knows? I don't know what's going on there, but he's so, and this isn't hating on him. I'm saying he's so vital for Philly's success.
No question.
Like, they're not doing shit without him, and he needs to play at least 60 to get them some continuity. A new Paul George, new system. It should just, you can't click. We've seen you can't click your fingers LA Clippers style anymore. It just does not work, and it's just a shame that it's gone this way in Philly. I mean, if you're looking from afar, he's becoming frustrated with the fan base. Fan base starting to become frustrated with him. They're not winning. He does have a 5-year deal, but he could be out of the door soon. But to answer your question, I think it's a small market team that's going to try to just say, you know what, we got to make that Charlotte, someone like that, pair him with Ball there. Someone like that team that's just like, shit, let's just roll the dice.
A good Pelicans, team that's probably like the Pelicans, Charlotte.
You got assets. You got assets to do it. You get a game changing big. And you just hope for health, right? You just hope for health. But, a team like Dallas or a team that already has a high usage guy, I wouldn't do it, because number one, Embiid is not going to come in accepting being a second or third, starring player or role, like a second or third usage guy. He's going to want to be the one usage guy. You figure out the other shit. So you can't bring him in with a,
No, Brooklyn. I would say like Brooklyn, Detroit, Chicago. I don't think Washington does it because they got, they're just.
Portland's got some assets they're going to start building,
Portland would be a team.
It's one of the shitty teams, the bottom 5 team in each side that could just say, we'll give you the farm. Like, let's try to, we'll keep some young pieces, but we'll also give you a couple of our good players, a couple of picks, and see how it goes. But you hope it doesn't come to that. I mean, this is a very talented Philly roster they've put together. There's no doubt about that. If they're healthy, they're top 3, top 4 in the East, hands down. But to be 1-7, bro, head scratcher. Who you got?
Oh, I had the same. I had Philly. I mean, look, you can't really, to me, I don't like to name Philly because of the injuries and things. But you look around the league, there's really not a lot of teams that really tank the week or anything like that, unless they're a bottom tier team. So, you could say Milwaukee, but I think. Well,
and Philly's trying to win. Like, Philly's trying to win. So is Milwaukee. Yeah. So they're two that, honorable mentions. I think Dallas didn't have a great week. They're 5-4, playing okay, but they a big game today right now as we're on air with Denver. So I think Dallas definitely could have been in the mix. Sacramento have been playing great basketball. New Orleans, you give them a pass because of the injuries. They've just been savaged by injuries.
And Denver won 4 in a row. Like that's a team that I had, I thought about for team of the week.
Same. Yeah, honorable mention for Team of the Week, playing really well, was definitely them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. But we get into the standings, man. Indiana is third at 5-5 in the East, bro, which is just crazy. You know, there's a debate about East versus West. I think the West is still much deeper overall than the East. I think the top of the East is solid, but there's a cliff edge there. It's wild. So you got Indiana, for those listening at home, 5-5 in third place. You've got the Dallas Mavericks in 11th place at 5-4. They're out of the playoff picture as of today, at 5-4 with a winning record. So that tells you how deep the West is. You got the Spurs at 4-6, which would put them in 8th, or tied for sixth in the East. It's pretty wild when you look at these standings, how bad the East is going right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just, once you get past the top two teams, everybody else is, right around under 500. It's crazy. Well, actually, I'm sorry. Indiana will be the third team at 500. 500 or more in the East. There was so much talk, including myself, that thought the East was going to be better than the West. It's early. It's only 10, 11 games in. I think teams are still trying to find their footing. Some teams deal with injury, as we've been talking about. But man, that's the one thing about the NBA, Bogues. I remember going to a college game, going to see Cincinnati versus Oregon. Oregon had Luke Ridnour, who played in the NBA for a while, and I was riding with Chris Wallace to the game, who was the GM of the Celtics, and and we go in and we were talking about college schedules in the NBA. He goes, that's the big difference between the NBA and the college. In college, like in college, you're going to have your first 5 or 6 games be dog shit. Azusa State, who gives a fuck Central, South, South I can't fucking shoot straight. Like, you're going to have all these teams early on in the year to like sort of get you into the season. And then you have your conference year, and usually in conference, that's going to be your toughest games, not counting tournament. But in the NBA, everybody's got NBA players on it. Now, some teams are really bad, but there's always that one player or 2 players that can make a difference in an NBA game because they're NBA fucking teams and players. So, like, you can't take anybody lightly. I remember Carlisle being on that on every game. Every scout report, you thought we were playing the 86 fucking Celtics. Never would say a team is like not that good. I always wondered why, but it's true. Like, if you want to keep that edge, that's what you got to do, because like you play the Utah Jazz, like San Antonio plays the Jazz the other night. I think it was last night or the night before.
They lose, yeah.
And they lose to the fucking Jazz, and everybody knows they're fucking battling for Cooper Flag, but you never know. They got marketing, and they got a top 5 or 6 coach in the league. Will Hardy, like they why not?
Yeah, give those teams life. If it's close at halftime, and they've lost 5 straight, and like Utah, and then it's close at the start of the 4th, and then like you said, you got Utah still have Clarkson off the bench who can give you 30. Those guys get good, feel good about themselves. They still have some guys that can do some damage, and you get hot, feel good, bang, 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 and you're like, how the hell did we lose that game? 100%.
Crazy.
It's and every team has 1 or 2 guys that can fill up the bucket. So definitely makes it interesting. All right, the Bucks, as we said last week, we don't have to get into this, but they've come out and said they want to make some trades, shockingly. But then in the same breath, they've leaked that they have no interest in trading Giannis. So whenever there's leaked statements like that, my eyebrows always raise up a little bit because, we have no interest in trading Giannis. Obviously, they're trying to pump up that value if it does come to it. But whenever you have to put out a statement through people, I always kind of lift my eyebrows just a little bit, pro. Is there writing on the wall there?
I mean, Bogues, they're 2-8, of course. Yeah. Unfortunately, most of these teams, they're run by people that are, that just like they go by the seat of their pants in the sense that they're so sensitive after a slow start. We got to blow it up, or we got to do this, we got to do that. And then the guys who really know what they're talking about and know what they're doing, they're going to be like, you know what, wait a minute. It's not done yet. We're good. We're not in a great place right now, but we're still all right. It's still, we're only 10 games into this thing, even though they're really bad right now. I wouldn't really read into it. I think if you're doing your job as a GM, you're always putting a price tag on every one of your players on the roster to see what the market value is for everybody. So I think you have to explore that. If you're not making calls, I mean, look, if you're 2-9, 2-8, and you're not making calls on your team, what the fuck are you doing for your job? Like I think you should be. I think that you should know what the market's gonna. Now the problem is you call too many people, that gets out, and then Shams leaks it, and it's all over the place. And now and you don't want to. The one thing you don't want to do right now is you don't want to start a chain reaction where like now it's like foregone conclusion, you're definitely trading him, and then it gets in his head where I gotta go. Of course, it's probably in the back of his head that what he's gonna do in the future, but like right now they're just a struggling team. Everybody's frustrated. You gotta like relax with it and just say, look, we'll get it through. I don't care what the season looks like this year. I don't think I'm gonna trade Giannis at least until the summer if I was gonna trade him. I think that trading him right now, why? Like, again, we talked about it last week. You can get all that, but now you've got Dame on your hands. You've got all these other things you have to deal with. I would ride it out this year. If it doesn't work, then you start trading off pieces. I just, Middleton hasn't been healthy all year. And to go back to our talk last week, and I remember you saying it, and it made sense. Even with Middleton, it doesn't improve your defense. That's true. But a lot of teams in this league just outscore you. They're not really worried about defense until the end of the games and things. And even then, they may not be able to make stops. I think that that needs to be their identity when everybody's healthy and back, that you just got to outscore teams. You're not going to stop many people. Your defense is in the toilet. I think that it's definitely a problem. But I think they are, Bogues. I think they are definitely gauging what their roster values, what everybody's worth, what they can get. That's just doing your job as a front office. And I think that, look, they'll continue to make those calls. They might be able to make a small move here and there, but I think they got to ride this thing out and see where it goes. And
there's not much on that roster to move other than Giannis. No. I mean, Brook Lopez's name come up for some veteran teams.
You're not getting anything. You're going to have to probably add assets to most of those guys you want to try to trade. You're not going to be getting assets back. You're going to be getting, it's going to probably take a first round pick or a couple of future seconds or another player to get off certain players. So I guess we just got to figure out.
Have some winnable games coming up, bro. They got Toronto, Detroit, Charlotte, Houston, Chicago, Indiana, Charlotte.
Yeah.
So, and then beyond that, they got Washington, Detroit, Atlanta again. So they got this next 10 games is vital for them. They got to go at least 7-3 to get back in contention. Whether they do that or not, who knows? We'll watch that space. KD's out with a strained calf, bro, for 2 weeks. The reason why I bring this up is I want Phoenix to show me now. You've put together a big three for this very reason, that you can sustain an injury or two. They're number one in the West. They're playing really good basketball. Nurkic is playing good for them. Got a good balance. Plumlee off the bench. I like kind of what they're doing with their roster. Some young talent coming off the bench too. They're 8-1, but I think this is perfect timing for them to prove what they're supposed to be with this roster makeup, right? It's only 2 weeks without KD, maybe 3 max. All good teams, pro, that make deep playoff runs and can win a championship can sustain losing a star for a week or two. All good teams. Everyone that I've been on, like we lost Steph for a playoff series against Portland once and I won that series, right? I think he came back in game 5 or 6. Example is you just gotta be able to sustain some wins. Now, you can't sustain losing one of your best players for 2 or 3 months, but good teams can find a way for a week or two to hold that ship steady, whether it's gone 500, whether it's 6-3, whatever it is. I want to see this now from the Phoenix Suns, and I think that'll really show where they're at. Beal hasn't been playing the best offensively. He's been very good defensively. Booker's been good for him. I want to see it now, bro. This is why these rosters are put together, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, you should be able to try to sustain something like this. You're going to have to. You have no other choice. I do think that if you were going to compare it to, say, the Boston Celtics when they had their three, when they had Ray Allen and, Garnett and Pierce, I compare like Beal maybe a little less to where Ray Allen was at the end of that,
Mhm.
regime in Boston. I losing 28 points and 7 rebounds with Durant's going to be extremely tough. With the makeup of that three, you're right. Beal hasn't played his best basketball. I think that it's going to be tough for him to really sustain long periods of time where he could, elevate a team 25, 26, 27 points a game. I think we'll see his play increase a little bit. He is a smart NBA player. He can make shots and you know how to play. It's just going to be it's going to be really hard to to get past losing that. And I don't know if they're built for it. And maybe that's not maybe that's a black mark on their so on their roster and their team makeup. But I think it's going to be tough. Just like you laid out, to lose. I mean, KD, you just get it to him. I mean, he's one of the best scorers of all time, and it's going to be hard to really generate that offense. They don't really have a lot of guys. Grayson Allen's a shot maker, Royce O'Neal's shot maker. Jones could stir some stuff up off pick and roll and make a couple of shots, but I don't know how much more Booker could do for you that he's already doing. I mean, he's already putting up a pretty good season, so it'll be really interesting and really tough to for this team to sustain losing KD. You lose your third guy. That's one thing. You lose Booker or Durant. That's another. I think it's going to be tough on him.
Yeah, it is, but that's the whole point. I want to see what they're
Yeah.
made of. I want to see what, and it's not winning every game without him. It's just holding that ship steady.
Right.
3-3, whatever it is. It cannot be a 1-6 or go on a losing streak now because KD's out. So I think.
What do they have coming up, folks? Did you have the
They got Sacramento as we speak. They're down 5 to Sacramento, just going into halftime. And beyond that, they got winnable games. They got. Let me just pull that up real quick.
Utah, Sac, Oklahoma City, Minnesota,
Sac
Orlando.
twice, Utah, and then they got Minnesota. But then Atlanta, the Clippers, Brooklyn. So they got winnable games. But like I said, 500. That'll be a tick for me. I think you gotta be able to sustain. KD turns an ankle in game 3 of a playoff series. He's just gonna need a night off and then go to game. You got to be able to sustain those things throughout an NBA season. I think it's very, very important. So we'll see. We'll watch that space. But I just want to see. They're playing real good basketball now too. So NBA Academy is closing its facilities or its academies in Mexico and Australia of all places, Pro. So. Not sure why the UAB is kind of rumored to be their next hot pot that they want to put a lot of their funding in towards. Huge growth market, obviously in the Arab Emirates and whatnot. But not great for Australia. The AIS is still obviously the Centre of Excellence, which is an academy basically that lies directly next to the NBA Academy. They're basically one academy, but half is funded by the NBA Academy system, and half it's funded by the Centre of Excellence. So they'll be losing, 12 to 13 players that can now be fully housed up in Canberra at the Centre of Excellence. So not great from that side of things, but I don't know. Maybe they just saw it as not a good return, not a good bang for buck. Now remember, Pro, that program isn't all Australian kids. It's they have to have a certain number of kids from different continents coming into that. Obviously, being in a first world country and whatnot, so they'd bring in kids from different parts of the world. But not a great thing, Pro. Losing an academy. But yeah, they're putting all the eggs in the Arab Emirates basket.
No, it was a good idea at first. It was a confusing one, but a good one. I thought, when they placed academies, they had some in China, they had one in Australia, they had one in Africa. Yeah, the Latin American.
The African one's staying. I think that's staying.
Yeah.
It's just Mexico and Australia. Yep.
It was just an interesting dynamic of what they wanted to do. Putting their hands on, young players throughout the world and trying to develop them. I did some coaching consultation for the academies and, just sort of talking to their coaches and the structure. I mean, it is quite an expense for the NBA to do this, throughout the world. It's interesting why they would get out of Latin America, especially with, trying to, they have a G League team in Mexico City. There's rumored they're trying to push for an NBA team in Mexico City, which I don't know how that would work, but I'm surprised they pulled out of Latin America, Australia as well. Um, you know, it's I just know it's a lot of money they put into it. They put a lot of development. They try to put staff around players as much as they can and try to help them with their, recruiting in American colleges. They've got quite a few that are in the NBA draft system. They've got quite a bit of talent that goes into those academies. But yeah, I had a friend that was at the Latin America that said that he heard rumblings about it closing, this year, and I have to read up on it. Are they doing it like right now or at the end of the season, Bogues? Did you read up on that?
July, closing in July. So
okay, so they're gonna have the season. Okay, got it.
In 6 months, but yeah. Anyway, just some news from that side of things. A few things from College Pro. I don't know if you saw these two things, but the Auburn Tigers were involved in a mid-air fight between teammates on the airplane, which had to emergency land. Did you see that? Read about that?
I did hear about it. Yeah, I did hear about it.
That's an all-timer.
I've never, Bogues, I mean, you're in the league a lot longer than I have. We're on a lot more of those flights. I've never seen an argument that, besides maybe card playing and people talking trash, I've never really seen somebody like get in an argument on the plane. Yeah,
I have. Would Auburn would have a charter, wouldn't they? Or they?
Yeah, most of those teams have charters.
Yeah. Well, we didn't.
Shit, the way they're getting fucking paid, the players might have their own fucking planes they fly to games.
we flew commercial when I was in Utah. But yeah, that's a wild one. So two teammates allegedly punched on the plane, forcing the plane. Now, yeah, that's. I'm surprised that they couldn't stop it if it was a charter though. That's what makes me think it might be commercial, because if it's a charter, I don't understand.
Well, I mean, maybe the pilot's like, I'm fucking no, fuck this shit.
Fuck this.
This is FAA. Yeah, fuck this. But now there is a video. I don't know.
I think I just pulled this one up because I saw it yesterday. Go ahead.
The video of the guy number 33, like in the corner, waiting for the ball and never getting the ball, and there's like
getting pissed off.
Yeah, so maybe it's him. I don't know. I have no idea.
Same team, right? Because it was Auburn. But was that Auburn versus? Was that?
This is Auburn. Yeah, it was Auburn.
Hold on, I'm just making sure it's Auburn. It was versus. Yeah. So I was going to bring this up because I was struggling to find it. I just found it. Yeah. Auburn versus Vermont. I'm not sure the names. You can find it on the video yourself. But basically, there's a guy. They're smacking Vermont, right? Mm-hmm. There's a guy on Auburn that's just hot. He's on fire. He's coming down every possession. They're getting him at look. His teammate is like being an absolute dick every possession. Like body language is horrible with every made shot his teammate makes. He's getting more and more pissed off, like blatantly, like putting his hands up in the air, like running side. Like it's a video that all parents should watch. I think about what your young kids, athletes should not do. You know, when your teammate's on fire like that and it's going crazy, I think he hit five threes in a row or 4 threes. That's a great moment. You're going to have that moment one day and you want your teammates to respond accordingly. And that video, it's hard to watch, man. That kid, you know.
Yeah, folks, the kids got to know that everybody's watching. So I have a couple of close friends that got hired by NBA teams to scout college games. And I've been watching to keep up with the draft rankings and ratings on guys. And I've been watching a bunch of games this weekend. And I saw a bunch of clips of players that were really highly rated making an absolute jackass of themselves like that kid did. And I would tell them, and I would say, hey, look, dude, first half, this game, 12:22 left in the first half, watch that clip. And that goes into their report. They don't understand that everybody's watching. And when you're evaluating players, and now these GMs of college teams, when you're going to inevitably transfer, and like I'm watching to evaluate, and I've got you valued at $250,000, and I've got 4 other guys valued at $250,000, and we're just grinding out tape and we're watching bullshit like that, it's going to cost you a lot of fucking money. And just the body language stuff, even if you hate somebody, hate playing with them, you just got to you got to fake it. You just got to fake like you love playing with them. And then get the fuck out of there the first minute you got. But you can't do that. It's a so bad look. Yeah.
If you're doing that with all the cameras on, all the lights on, I mean, it's you know, there was a coach I can't remember who the college coach was. I just saw it saying that I think I mentioned this on the podcast. They love going to recruit and scout when players are up 40 or down 40.
Yeah.
Because they watch how they are on the end of the bench. They watch are they still engaged? Are they moping? Are they bitching? And look, there's players with attitude and emotion, and it can be a bad thing, but you can tell if it's from a passionate point of view or a genuinely I'm pissed off or I'm like, hey, that's okay. Like scouts love that kind of fire, but when it's this kind of stuff where you're genuinely pissed off your teammates doing well, I think that kid will be, obviously it's trending all over the internet. He's gonna be pulled up and probably regret the decisions he made in that game. And I wonder if that is what led to the fight on the flight.
I mean, Bones, if it's interesting that they have a fight and this guy was acting like this. I mean, hey, look, I don't know if he's involved. I'm not going to say that he was. I have no idea. But it does sort of, look, if we were playing the board game Clue, I would definitely say that it was him with the fucking, with the wrench in the library. That number 33 is definitely a prime suspect for that, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a head scratcher, but you hope they sort all that out. And that was in a win too, so I imagine they were losing. Interesting. All right. Useful, useless. Got two good ones on behalf from Andrew D. Bailey on Twitter. So he had an interesting stat about every team up until this point in the season. So I had two that I found that were really, really interesting. Number one, LaMelo Ball averaging 28.4 points pro, which is on track to be a Hornets franchise record. The current record holder is who, pro?
It's not Rex Chapman. Lonzo Moore. Oh, no. Glenn Rice.
Yes, you had it. Yeah, Glenn Rice, 26.8 in 96-97. He was a bucket. He could really shoot it. And he had a really good couple of 3 or 4 years there in Charlotte. But LaMelo Ball could be the all-time franchise record holder, pro. Useful, useless?
Useless for now because it's so early. But I mean, that's pretty. I mean, especially with everybody chasing every fucking record on Earth. But I would say it's useless for now. I say if you brought this up at like February, I'd say pretty useful because he'd have a legit chance. Now it's looking a lot more that he's going to break that thing. But I would say useless for now just because it's so early.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's useless right now. Follow that, pro. Do you think he breaks it?
Yeah, because he's just going to jack fucking shot. No,
Man.
You know what?
No, he is.
No.
I don't go back on that. He shot 18 threes the other night. He was 5 for 18 from 3, I think.
No, just
5 for 18 by himself.
The guy's never healthy, Bogues. The guy's never healthy. I just don't think that it's going to sustain it. I think he will jack up fucking shots. If he's healthy, he will get it. If he plays like 60, 65 games, whatever.
What's the number to break what it is? What's the team record number? You got to play what? 60, 65?
65, I believe.
To break records as well?
I think so. Yes. Oh no,
okay.
To break records. I think I think it's like 60 or 65 games.
Okay, yeah, but he gets them up. But he's playing well, but he gets them up. Like I said, they're actually doing okay. They're in the East, so they're up there. But they're a bad, mediocre team that is fun to watch. Got some young stars. All right, next one. Dyson Daniels is averaging 3.0 steals per minute in 31.6 minutes. There's only 15 individual seasons in NBA history in which a player has averaged more than 3 steals a game, and the most recent was in 93-94. Useful, useless?
Again, it's so early, useless, but that's a great stat. Like I said, if this was like January, February, pretty impressive. Right now, it's so early.
And he's at 3.3 actually, not 3.0. He's at 3.3.
That's pretty fucking impressive, though. I mean, that is an impressive
7
stat.
and 6 back-to-back games the last 2 games.
Jeez, imagine.
Like usually when you're leading the league in steals, it's sometimes, like you said, a Carlisle will be on the scouting report like, hey, don't fuck around with the ball around this guy. He's going to take it off you, So it's sometimes harder because guys don't want to do anything extra around you. They want to just get off the ball and cut and screen. And then to get 6 and 7 in back-to-back games, I think it's useful. I think it is early, but that's an amazing stat. And to follow that up, he's leading the league in deflections, bro. So it's not, a lot of these steal guys sometimes are just cheat. They're hunting steals, but they're hunting them where, they get 1 out of 5, and then the 4 out of 5 they just absolutely screw their team on the backside because they've lunged for a steal, and now it's like rotation, open three, right? It's kind of same as like guys that hunt blocking shots instead of just blocking the ones that are there. They try to like get, high stat numbers in blocks. It hurts your team on the backside. The fact that he's actually getting a boatload of deflections too is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's totally impressive. I mean, I think I think he's found his calling on what is going to make him desirable in the NBA to stay in the NBA a long time and be somebody who impacts winning, is to be able to get steals and get deflections and be energetic and a defensive player. Obviously he'll be decent offensively on some scale of the game, but I mean, I think that he needs to understand that that's how he's going to impact high level games. It's just to pick up people, get deflections, take space away, get up into the ball and pick and roll coverage and just show your hands and just be that guy that's just all over the floor. And, look, teams love players like that. They need players that don't exactly need the ball in their hands at all times, and they could do other things but just score and isolate, to be able to impact winning. So I think that's a tremendous, it'll be a tremendous accomplishment if he could keep that up defensively. Even 90%, 85% of that, it'll still be a great accomplishment, I think.
And great fit next to Trae Young. I think it works well. I think having a guy that, they can have Trae play on the worst guard and keep Dyson on the best. And that does lead us into the Aussie of the week, and it's got to go to Dyson Daniels. Leading the league in steals and deflections, like I said, his week was 12 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and 4.5 steals for the week. So in 4 games, just amazing numbers with that steal. We're going to give Giddy the runner-up. He's 11.7 points, 4.2 rebounds, and 8.2 assists. But yeah, Dyson Daniels was just a fantastic week. He had a big 3 against his old team too. I don't know if you saw that, and got in trouble. Got questioned for a gun violence taunt when he hit the 3 and did kind of felt like a machine gun 3 to his whole old bench, which I love. I love the fact that he was going after him. But Dyson Daniels playing some great basketball. Fact or fake news, bro? Where are you at?
Oh, so you got 4 teams that are pretty elite record-wise, and Golden State's almost up there as well. So you got Phoenix, Oklahoma City, Cleveland, Boston. So right now, I might have old standings. Hold on, I might be a game behind. Let me get them updated.
Cleveland, Boston,
Cleveland 11-0, Boston 9-2, and then you got in the West, you've got Phoenix 8-1, Oklahoma City 8-1, Golden State 7-2. There will be at least 1, if not 2 teams that win 65 games this year, challenging the 70, but not exactly getting it. There'll be at least 1, if not 2 teams. There'll be 2 teams that go north of 65 wins this year. Fact or fake news?
2? I'd have to look. What do we have? How many you had last season?
I do not know.
Up, Caleb. That'd be good. Good to see over the last couple of seasons what it looks like. It's hard to do, man. 65 is tough. 65 is very tough. What do you got, Caleb?
Oh, hold on.
Last season,
Boston Celtics
64
had 64-18, and then top of the West was 57-25, and that was OKC.
So Boston didn't hit.
Boston 64, yeah. It's the top.
Fake news, pro. History never lies. So
History
2,
never
hell
lies.
no. 1, look, the Cleveland sustain, that's the question. I think Boston will have a chance. OKC now with the Chet Holmgren injury, depending on where that goes. Phoenix, I don't think so. I don't think Phoenix is 65 because Beal's going to get hurt. Booker's probably going to get hurt. They're going to have these issues throughout the season, but they'll be a very good team. OKC's probably, if there's no long-term injuries, they've got a chance. But I just, 2 definitely not. 1, the odds say no, pro.
Phoenix had 64 wins 2 years ago. I forgot about that. That's amazing. Yeah, it's
pretty big 3.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that you think about, these really good teams, but, mostly you're probably going to fall into that 53, 54, 55 wins to win the conference. But you do have a few teams, with unbelievable stuff like Oklahoma City, Boston. Those are 2 teams that you would say, they might challenge to try to get to 65, but you're right. With the Holmgren injury, you never know. Boston might be resting guys. You don't know what Porzingis is going to be like when he comes back. Will he get hurt again? Hopefully not. But yeah, just an interesting, sort of question about record.
Yeah, yeah. You forget Porzingis is even missing from Boston. How well they're playing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So a big addition was huge for them in the finals too. So, but I think that's a tough ask. I think especially in the day and age of rest nights, you know, a lot of those good teams probably in the last month or two will try to protect their guys for the playoff runs, and that will lead to some more losses, I believe.
Fact or fake news? Sam Presti is going to own 4 of the Sydney Kings draft picks over the next 2 years.
Yeah, if we had draft picks, he probably would. You don't know next stars, that's for sure. But that guy is a genius. He's got the draft pick calculator on
Never
lock.
Never play Monopoly with Sam Presti ever.
Just owns half the team's souls in the NBA. It's
unbelievable.
Yeah, so. All right, Pro. Thanks. Another good week. Getting to NBL shortly as Pro logs off, and we'll see you next week.
Perfect. See you guys later.
All right, some NBL news real quick to finish off the podcast this week. Mitch Creek has signed in Turkey with Trabzonspor BK, actually a second division team or League One below their Super League. So I found that very interesting. Team that had some financial troubles a number of years ago. But I hope he gets some of that up front. But he's signed over there, which is strange. It hasn't really. I think Southeast Melbourne still have his rights in Australia. I'm not sure what's happened there as to why he didn't want to go back or all that kind of stuff. There were rumblings it was around the coaching appointment, and then he had I think a small stint in Puerto Rico. But anyway, he's over in Turkey. NBL coaches have said they don't like the live microphones in huddles. Look. I understand the inner sanctity of those huddles in the game. Look, sometimes coaches get caught up in saying things they shouldn't. They get caught up in the emotion of swearing. That was a huge issue when it first started because people were complaining watching live telecasts that there was some swearing. That hasn't been that much of an issue, but I think coaches are just feeling the pressure of having the mic. I think it's great as far as a differentiator the NBL has that no other leagues have. I know for a fact that other leagues will never allow it. AFL, some of these leagues that have coaches associations and whatnot would never allow it. I think it's good because you got to have something that's a little bit different. And the NBL is fighting for media coverage, fighting for rights. The media love the fact that media rights deals love the fact they have that because I think it's intriguing and it's different and it gets into the heart of things. But maybe I don't know. Maybe you go to a 5-second delay. I don't know what the change is, but coaches just don't like it as a whole. I think it's a good thing. I think the NBL has to continue to try to push the envelope on doing new and innovative things to bring more eyeballs and step outside the norm. So that was interesting. Scott Roth, coach of Tasmania Jack Jumpers, he made some comments around a few of his players receiving some horrible messages on social media. And their families actually receiving some just mind-blowingly stupid and horrific comments on social media. Now it's social media, so there's a lot of people out there that go on there and just act like absolute fools. This is linked generally to sports bettors, so I've dealt with this when I was in the NBA. Some punter's done a 10-leg multi and you've screwed it up for him, and they send you abuse. Going after families is just a no. You just don't do that. I mean, it's just so lowbrow. It's hard these days. My advice to those players: look, if comments like that really affect you, where you're sometimes players get death. I've had death threats. I've had all kinds of shit. All kinds of really derogatory comments. My take was, I know it's going to be on there. It's my choice to then not go on there. That's probably the best solution. And people will say, well, that shouldn't come down to that. There should be things in place. I think it's very hard to police social media to an extent where you can stop idiots being idiots. It's like going out in public, driving on the road. There's idiot drivers. There's road rage. There's getting an airplane. There's people, getting into it on airplane. Like there's assholes in society, and I don't think you can prevent that. I think the family one, to me, I never wanted any family linked to me on social media for that very reason, because they become collateral damage at times. Is it right? No. They should be allowed to be on social media with their names promoting it, but if you're going to go in that world and promote you're a wife or sister or auntie or uncle or cousin, you're going to get some backlash sometimes. And it's wrong. It's totally wrong. I don't agree with it. But my advice to those athletes is probably tell your family or spouses or whatever, have anonymous accounts, just lay low. You know, if it affects you, if you know what you're getting into, you're gonna have some angry gambler who just put his last mortgage payment on a bet that lost. You shouldn't have to deal with abuse. I'm not condoning it whatsoever, but I think you gotta understand that if that isn't really gonna affect the way you go about things, your mental health, and you're really gonna take it to heart, because you know it's daunting, especially if you've never experienced it. And that was another reason why I didn't want family, or I deal with that stuff and I've dealt with it a lot, so I know how to handle it. It doesn't bother me. But for someone that's never dealt with that, you're like, oh, someone on the internet wants me to die. Like, what the fuck? Like, it's tough. So, look, I agree with Scott Roth that it's horrible, but it seemed like he wanted help, you know, asking the NBL to police it better, or they can't. I'm not sure what the NBL can do. There are people out there saying, well, the NBL is involved with sports betting. You know, it's their own fault. But there's a lot of people out there that are good people that sports bet and don't do this. So my whole thing is you shouldn't penalize everyone, because there's a bunch of morons out there doing the bad thing, which are the minority. There's millions and millions of sports bettors. You know, a small percentage of them are being absolute fools online. Even if you did take away sports betting advertising that we see in Australia a lot, even if you take it away from sponsoring leagues, there's just so much overseas happening. People can bet overseas, and the same thing's going to happen, right? You know, and I see this all the time online. There's people from not even from Australia that bet on NBL games because of the time difference, and they, you know, sometimes there's compulsive gamblers just gamble on all kinds of stuff. I'm not a cancel sports betting. I'm not a cancel the advertising. I think it's conversations that parents need to have with kids and teens when they're coming into that part of their life, and you know, it's just a matter of handling it better and not being a dickhead and going online and abusing players. So hopefully people wake up to that. I don't think they will, because, you know, you comment on politics on social media, you get the same reaction. Comment on this is my sporting team, you get the same reaction from rival sporting teams. It's just, there's arseholes in society. I don't think it's just directly to sports betting. Onto the NBL. We'll start with the Sydney Kings playing Southeast Melbourne. Horrible performance. 3.5 quarters of brutally bad basketball. Brian Goorjian, you know, press conference after the game confirmed that he's was not very happy with the performance. And you don't usually come away from wins feeling that way. Sydney Kings steal that game. Didn't deserve to win it. Southeast Melbourne kind of lost the game. The Kings took control of the last 5 or 6 minutes and snuck a win out. But just a kind of deflating game for the Sydney Kings. I think they need to, you know, really get back onto just fundamental solid basketball, which Gorge has been preaching, trying to find lineups that play with passion and energy, and that's something that's been super inconsistent from what every man and his dog has said is a very talented team. We think we've put together a very talented team. It just hasn't clicked. And I will say I like it at this point of the season. I'd rather be where we are now than, you know, 12-0 and everything's smooth sailing and we've had no adversity. There's some adversity in the land of the Sydney Kings right now, and we've got to work our way through it. So I love that big game against Illawarra coming up on the weekend before the fever breaks. Looking forward to that. Southeast Melbourne then bounce back versus a short-handed Cairns. Cairns are battling, but just not enough. Not enough out there. A lot of injuries. You've got the suspension of Rob Edwards. Not much positive there as far as just trying to keep bodies on the court, but they battle, but yeah, just not good enough for Southeast Melbourne. Melbourne pummeled Brisbane in a game that had a blackout. Went completely off TV. Apparently there was something that happened externally from outside the arena, which basically cut the telecast, which had to be live tweeted by the NBL account, which sucks. You hate to see that kind of stuff, but the game went completely dead in the fourth quarter, and they end up Melbourne with a comfortable win in Brisbane. They follow that up by beating a fully in control Perth Wildcats in Melbourne. I think Perth up 10 or 11 at halftime, and it was a game that you should watch if you haven't. Behind, you know, CG 43, Chris Golding just going absolutely bonkers. Like, this is an amazing game to watch just for the price of admission. Even if you're not a fan of either team, it's a good game for kids to watch, to show them that, hey, even if you're down 10, 15 points, a game can change so quickly in basketball. And he has 25 points in the third quarter, 22 in just under a 4-minute span, just turned the game on its head. And Perth had full control. Perth looked like they were going to grind out a nice victory up at halftime, feeling good about themselves, and just a world-class performance. You don't get many of those in the NBL, just with a shorter season of the NBA, less games, where it's just an absolute elite Hall of Fame worthy of performance, and he was unbelievable to watch. And everything he threw up, he knew was going in once he felt in that motion. You just love seeing players get into that realm of just like, I'm hoisting this up because I made the last 3. I'm hoisting this up because I made the last 4, and they just know it's going in, and it's not even touching the rim. So unbelievable performance. I highly recommend to watch that game, and well done to Chris Golding on that one. A lot of conjecture around the Brisbane Bullets and Rocco Zikarsky and not playing much minutes, and when's he going to play? Look, they're 3 and 5 at the moment. The issue is the 6th spot, I think, which will be a playing spot, will probably be earned with 12 to 13, maybe 14 wins. But I think you can be below 500. So Brisbane are kind of always in that realm where they could sneak a spot. If they get to a spot where they're 4 and 14, do we see them just unleash and let him play? It doesn't look like he's going to play more than 10 or 15 minutes a night. Is he ready to play big minutes? I don't think so yet. I think he's still working towards that. I think definitely his wind and his shape at times when he plays long stretches, he definitely gets tired a little bit faster than most of the other guys. So I think he's still working to get into that basketball shape, probably still growing, probably still filling out that body. So it will be interesting to see what Brisbane do, depending on where their record is. But they got an all NBL candidate in Tyrell Harrison. I don't think he gets in the all NBL because I don't think their record will be good enough. He might get second team maybe, but he's having a hell of a season. So what does that do for his draft stock? Is it helping it? Is it hurting it? Look, I don't think it's helping. I don't think it's hurting completely. Teams still know he's very, very young, and this is a professional league with real professional talent. You got a lot of good guys in this league that have played all around the world. Montrezl Harrell's, was a 6th man of the year just a couple of years ago, playing a huge role in Adelaide. So it'll be interesting to see where Brisbane go with it. And I think as the season goes on, I think you'll see some more and more minutes from Rocco, and it will just be interesting to see how that all goes with his stock. I think he's pace still to be around a late first rounder. He was a lottery. I think now most of the boards have him as a late first rounder. You just hope it doesn't fall any more below that. But teams know he's playing in a professional league, so you hope that there's a bit of a benefit of the doubt. And he's super young. Like I said, a lot of room to work. So we'll see how all that goes. Tassie pushed Perth, but Perth too good at home. They get that big win against a shorthanded Tasmania. Milton Dorr finally found his stroke in that game, and they had their chances to win it. Some real tough shot making in that one. Tassie followed that loss up with a big win versus New Zealand by 19. So they smack one of the best teams in the league as per the standings, and squeak out a win there. And look, Tassie's a team you just can't count out. Their record isn't great. They're towards the bottom of the ladder, but with a bit of health, and if they do go that route to replace an import, you just don't know. You just don't know where they can go. They can still grind out and get to a 5th or a 6th playing spot as a team you don't want to see in a playing spot, that's for sure. And Adelaide take care of a fast-starting Hawks. It looked like Illawarra were going to absolutely run all over Adelaide in Adelaide. They were up by, I think it was 16 to 4 or 5 at one point. Just looked like it was all flowing nicely for Illawarra, hitting 3, shooting the ball well. And credit to Adelaide once again. That Adelaide of old would have lost that by 30. And there would have been finger pointing and drama during the week, but they grind out and they end up winning by a decent margin. I think it was 6 or 7 points or 8 points towards the end of the game, and just a really good performance, balanced performance. They got a lot of good pieces there. Harrell again was huge. Getting into the crowd, pumping them up, talking smack to the Illawarra bench. So real entertaining. Might not be everyone's cup of tea, but a price of admission guy. And Adelaide firming to be a very, very solid, not only playoff favorite, but championship favorite. They got a very, very deep roster and a very, very talented roster. So credit to them etching that game out. A lot of big games coming up this weekend. Like I said, it is the fever break, so every team's looking to get to that break with another victory, another win, as are the Sydney Kings and the Illawarra Hawks. So I think finishing this with a 2-week break, and then obviously the Boomers stuff. Congrats, by the way, to all the guys that made that Boomers squad for the Asia Cup games. So hopefully they get some wins over there. I don't think it'll be the best competition because I think it's part of the qualifiers. So it'll be some teams that we should get after pretty easily. But congratulations to all of them, and we will see everyone in a couple of weeks' time for the NBL news, and of course next week for NBA news. So thanks for joining the pod again, and we'll see you in a week's time.